And I think the reason they print so many defamatory pieces is because no one challenges them. No one has the pockets to challenge them. And so they keep doing it and they keep getting away with it. Thankfully, I do have a great legal team who is relatively affordable as far as legal teams go. And he's won a number of cases against the government. So I am really, really blessed to have access to somebody like him and his team to use. But for the vast majority of people, if you try and consult your everyday law firm, you're looking at a huge amount of money to try and just defend what is the basic truths behind your name and your reputation.
New Zealand's most lied about independent journalist, someone I've grown massive respect for over time, has taken on the mainstream media and forced them into an embarrassing settlement they don't want you to know about. Chantel Baker, thank you for joining us, and exciting news, but for those that haven't been following, especially outside of New Zealand, tell us from the beginning what happened.
Yeah, so I recently sued the New Zealand Herald for defamation. This was because back in 2023, at the beginning, we had a big flood here in New Zealand caused by Cyclone Gabrielle. Many people lost their lives, and I did a fundraiser, albeit small, to raise funds for water to get helicoptered into a remote town that was cut off. The Herald, one of the writers there, saw this, obviously decided that he wanted to make me look like a villain, and did a front page article on the Herald, accusing me of all sorts of things to do with the fundraiser, disinformation in general, and generally just tried to kind of destroy my reputation as much as they possibly could. So I decided to sue them. We've recently settled that lawsuit, and it's enabled me to then bring a second suit against our other major media organisation here in New Zealand called Stuff News. And this largely centres around a lady called Kate Hanna, who was the head at the time of the Disinformation Project, which were self-appointed disinformation experts. So take from that what you will.
I know obviously it's a settlement, so the amount, you're happy with the amount, I understand. But what can you tell us about the settlement? Did they apologise? Is there anything in the settlement like that?
They did their version of an apology, which is essentially saying Chantel believes that it was defamatory and we've removed certain statements. They didn't remove the article. They haven't apologised for writing the article. So at this stage, I chose that it was a decision I had to make. Either I settle with them then, or I choose to take them to court, in which case I wouldn't be able to afford to do the second suit against Stuff. So it was more of a financial decision to take that settlement and then be able to go for Stuff News. And in both cases, I am really happy, particularly with the settlement, because what it means is that they have to notify, and this is any media organisation has to notify their insurance. And so all of this is actually beneficial when it comes to them writing pieces about me in the future, or other people that are defamatory and false, because they now know actually we will bring cases if we can. So
are you telling us, just so we're clear, that you're using the money from the settlement from the New Zealand Herald to sue the second, also, I don't know which one's larger, they're both pretty big news networks in New Zealand, but you're using the settlement from the first to sue the other?
I can't talk about anything to do with the finances and to do with the settlement. All I can say is that I'm very happy and that it has allowed me to then go and do the second suit. So I can't disclose anything really about the finances or how they're being used or what they may look like. But I'm also in partnership with Centrist New Zealand, which is another independent news organisation who do a lot more written work. And they are the ones that have been helping to bring these lawsuits because it is a big financial investment. And as we all know, the last few years have been taxing for a lot of us.
Well, congratulations on your win. It's like a David and Goliath situation. It's always good when the little guy actually walks away winning, especially when they're in the right. New Zealand Herald, I've contemplated myself suing them a couple of times, but here in Australia or anywhere else around the world, I don't think many people care what the New Zealand Herald have to say, but the publication is quite powerful within New Zealand. I learnt that firsthand when they lobbied the Ardern government to have me banned from coming to New Zealand to cover a lockdown protest at the end of the COVID saga. And they were successful at the time. Nobody put their name to the article, but that article, especially with time and as we started our legal process, we found that it was the source to everything was their article with no byline. Once it was overturned, though, they tried to write another article. I'm not sure if you know the reporter Rachel Ma.
No.
When I only a few months ago returned back to New Zealand, and nobody knows this, when I returned back to New Zealand, she was chasing up Destiny Church about our visit. It's a documentary that we have coming, Destiny Uncut, and people can go see the trailer at destinyuncut.com. But I travelled to New Zealand for a couple of weeks to do this documentary, to follow Destiny Church. And this Rachel Ma contacted Destiny Church to ask them a bunch of questions surrounding my visit. So when I heard that, well, firstly, I saw the article, and once again, the New Zealand Herald, I'm not sure in your article if yours was with a byline. It sounds like yours did have a name put to it. This new article a couple of months ago when it came also didn't have a name attached to it, although I know this Rachel Ma is the one who was calling around trying to fish for the answers, but didn't contact me, and also for months now has been avoiding my calls so that I could set the record straight, because I know how much the truth matters to them. Do you think this is something I should now take further?
I would recommend taking it further, and I think it's very clear from how they write their articles, and particularly around that time period that you're talking about, they did many articles where they left off authors, they left off bylines, and that was intentional because they don't want you to be able to put repercussions against what they're doing. But I would recommend it. I think it is really important. Many people are starting to realize that these organizations are not honest and are not transparent, even though their own media regulations are to be all of those things. They essentially disregard that. But what I see them as is they are more of a propaganda tool to try and destroy people's reputations and to make sure that they discredit you enough that people don't listen to what you're saying. And that is now how I view institutions like the New Zealand Herald. They essentially are there to ensure that nobody actually follows what you're saying, nobody cares what you're saying, and they can discredit you as much as humanly possible. And they've definitely done that with you here in New Zealand.
Well, when I heard your news on Twitter, I was excited for you, but I thought I'd quickly do a Google search to see how many of the other mainstream media networks in New Zealand are talking about this. Is quite a significant, win. The fact that the lead story of one of the most prominent publications in the country had to settle on their story. So their lead story that they, by admission, if they really wanted to stand behind it, they would have fought you all the way. So I was looking for that story anywhere in the media and I didn't find anything. Am I missing something? Was it reported somewhere?
I've never seen it reported outside of, I think, the Daily Telegraph and Centrist, which are both independent media organisations. Plunkett has covered it, who I know who's got the platform. So only independent media has covered it. None of the major channels have covered it. None of them have called me, which is entertaining because they do like to ring me when it suits their narrative.
Why do you think none of the mainstream media have reported on this case?
I think it makes them look bad, and I think it makes them look weak. And that's why, because it shows that they're not impenetrable, and that the everyday person can actually fight back and can get wins against the mainstream media. And I think the reason they print so many defamatory pieces is because no one challenges them, no one has the pockets to challenge them, and so they keep doing it and they keep getting away with it. Thankfully, I do have a great legal team who is relatively affordable as far as legal teams go, and he's won a number of cases against the government. So I am really, really blessed to have access to somebody like him and his team to use. But for the vast majority of people, if you try and consult your everyday law firm, you're looking at a huge amount of money to try and just defend what is the basic truths behind your name and your reputation.
I'm glad that you're happy with the result. We look forward to following what happens with the other ones. I think it's about time that New Zealand's mainstream media is held accountable, because even just my little interactions with your country's media, gosh, it was something shocking.
Fire and Fury should be a very interesting case. It's a lot more expensive for us to bring because you have to submit the entire hours-long documentary as a whole. You can't just submit small pieces. They used fake smoke. They cut to graphics which were projected on huge buildings, and everything about it was falsified, and yet they won National Journalism Awards for it. And they did not actually ask any of the people in it for their right of reply whatsoever. And their justification of that was, they already have social media following, so they've gotten to say their piece, even though they've never been asked the questions that were then put in the documentary, or I guess the answers to said questions in the documentary. So that should be a nitty-gritty one, and it may take a significant amount of time, but I'm really excited to kind of sink my teeth into that. I think it's going to be hopefully a great win, not only for me, but for people like yourself and many others, particularly here in New Zealand, that have been defamed by the Herald or by Kate Hannah, or people associated with them who like to try and pretend that all of us are dangerous, potential criminals or Nazis or whatever they like to label you, just because you disagree with what they're putting out.
Well, I might get those the details of your legal team, and we'll chat off air. Thanks again, and good luck. If you think it's important for the world to hear Chantel's full story, make sure to like, comment, but most importantly, share it far and wide because, look, we know the New Zealand Herald struggles with the truth, and they're certainly not going to start now when it's this embarrassing. But we also can't rely on their rivals in the mainstream media because they seem to be covering for them as well for whatever reason. So it's up to you guys at home. And then if you're interested in our upcoming documentary in New Zealand, destinyuncut.com, check out the trailer, check out all the details. It's going to be launched really soon. So destinyuncut.com, you can even, if you love it, you love the project, you can even get some of the perks there at the moment still available to have your names in the credit. Check it all out, destinyuncut.com. I can't wait to head back across the ditch.